Imagine moving into a quiet, picture-perfect neighborhood, freshly cut lawns, smiling neighbors, and an HOA that claims to keep everything safe and organized. Sounds normal, right? But what if behind those white picket fences and monthly HOA meetings, there was a dark secret, one tied to a government-sealed factory, where your very neighbors were printing fake currency, sandwich notes, by the millions? And what if the only thing standing between them and total control was an undercover FBI agent who just happened to be their new neighbor? This story isn't about late trash pickups or arguments over mailbox paint. No, this is about an HOA running a counterfeit empire with guns, power, and betrayal at every turn. And when the walls closed in, one wrong move meant not just exposure, but death. Stay with me until the end, because you won't believe how this HOA's empire came crashing down. And hey, before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss more insane HOA stories just like this one. The city slept under the glow of dim streetlights, unaware that something far darker than petty crime pulsed through its veins. In a quiet industrial zone, hidden behind towering walls and layers of barbed wire, sat a government-sealed printing factory. Officially, it was mothballed, locked down years ago when the Federal Reserve modernized its security protocols. Unofficially, it was alive again, its machines humming in secret, its presses spitting out something far more dangerous than legitimate currency. The culprits? Not some shadowy foreign syndicate, not even a rogue political cell. It was an HOA. Yes, a homeowners association. Those committees people mocked for obsessing over lawn heights and mailbox paint had wormed its way into something much bigger. The board members, power-drunk and greedy, realized that their influence over the neighborhood wasn't enough. They wanted wealth, untouchable power, the kind only endless stacks of money could buy. And with a few connections, a bribed government contractor, and access to the abandoned facility, they found their golden goose. But this wasn't sloppy counterfeit work. They weren't amateurs printing bills in a basement. No, they used a technique that could fool even the most advanced detectors. Sandwich notes, one side of the currency printed on one sheet, the reverse on another, then pressed and sealed together. Thin, crisp, and almost indistinguishable from the real thing. The HOA had perfected it. They circulated small bundles through cash-heavy businesses, laundromats, construction deals, slowly but surely flooding the economy. Of course, the world thought it was just inflation. Prices rising, savings thinning, regular people struggling harder each month. Nobody suspected that an HOA of all things had its hands on the gears of a criminal empire. But I did. My name doesn't matter. Not yet. What matters is that I was deep inside this mess, closer to them than they could ever imagine. The FBI had gotten whispers, traces of counterfeit bills turning up in scattered states, each one almost too perfect to be fake. Almost. We needed someone inside, someone who could blend into their perfect little community, the one that seemed so normal from the outside but hid the darkest operation this city had ever seen. That someone was me. I remember the first time I drove through their neighborhood. Perfect lawns, shiny SUVs and driveways, houses lined up like they'd been cloned, kids riding bikes, retirees gossiping on porches. Nothing looked out of place. But behind those HOA meetings, behind the friendly smiles and cookie-cutter homes, they were running an underground mint. I could almost smell the ink on their hands. They welcomed me, of course. Another young homeowner moving into their subdivision. I paid my dues, smiled at their cookouts, even attended their meetings where they argued about fences and trash bins. But I listened closer. I watched. I pieced together their whispers, the names they didn't mean to say, the calls they thought nobody overheard. Every clue pulled me closer to the heart of their operation. And the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became, because they were paranoid. They knew someone might come after them eventually, and they had layers of security, watchers, enforcers, even people in law enforcement on their payroll. One wrong step, and I'd be buried under the same concrete that muffled the sound of their presses. But I couldn't stop. This wasn't just about catching counterfeiters. This was about exposing the rot inside a community people trusted, inside a system designed to keep order. An HOA that went from petty power tripping to orchestrating a crime capable of destabilizing the economy. As I lay awake that first night in my new house, blinds drawn, listening to the faint hum in the distance, the hum of machines no one was supposed to be running, I knew one thing: I was in the right place. And if I played my cards right, I'd burn their empire to the ground. The second week in the neighborhood was when things started to shift. By then, I had already been invited to the HOA's so-called executive gathering, not the public meetings where they scolded homeowners about overgrown hedges or holiday decorations left up too long. No, this was a private affair, hidden in the community center basement, the kind of meeting where invitations were whispered, not mailed. They thought I was one of them, a new homeowner eager to fit in, maybe even ambitious enough to climb the HOA ladder. That was exactly the image I projected: a little charm, a little curiosity, and a carefully rehearsed eagerness to serve. They ate it up. The basement smelled faintly of ink and machine oil. It was a smell I recognized immediately from my training days when I toured federal printing facilities. The air was too heavy for just a neighborhood association meeting, and that's when I knew I was getting closer. The president of the HOA, a smug man named Gregory Hall, carried himself like a senator on campaign day. Slick suit, combed back silver hair, a voice that made every sentence sound like a decree. He stood at the head of a long table, stacks of papers before him, though I could tell those weren't agendas for gardening projects. "Efficiency is everything," Gregory said, tapping the table with two fingers. "One slip, one miscut, one ink error, and the whole batch is wasted. We can't afford sloppy work." My ears sharpened. He wasn't talking about landscaping budgets. They spoke in half-coded language, but to my trained ear it was obvious. Batch meant notes. Efficiency meant profit margins. Distribution meant circulation routes. The more they talked, the clearer it became. They weren't just dabbling. They were running this like a corporation, a counterfeit empire disguised as urban order. One board member, a woman named Linda with eyes sharper than knives, noticed me listening. "And what about our new neighbor?" she asked, her tone sweet but suspicious. "Does he know what it really takes to live here?" The room went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned to me, and for a moment my cover hung by a thread. My heart thudded, but my face stayed calm. "I didn't buy here for the landscaping," I said smoothly, leaning forward. "I bought in because I've heard this HOA knows how to keep things running efficiently." A beat of silence. Then Gregory's lips curled into a smile. He chuckled, low and approving. The others followed. Linda didn't. She kept staring at me, as if peeling back layers I didn't even know I had. "Good," Gregory said finally. "We like neighbors who understand." The rest of the meeting blurred with talk of shipments and allocations, all spoken like they were organizing bake sales, but I caught every word. They weren't just pressing sandwich notes. They were moving them across state lines, using shell companies and cash-heavy businesses. It was bigger than we suspected. Afterward, Gregory clapped me on the back as we climbed the stairs. "Stick around, neighbor," he said. "You'll find we're more than just an HOA. We're a family." I forced a smile, but inside I knew what family meant in operations like this. It wasn't trust, it wasn't love, it was entrapment. Once you were in, there was no getting out alive. Later that night, I wrote my report in invisible ink, stashing it behind a loose panel in my garage wall where even the most paranoid HOA inspector wouldn't look. My handler would collect it when the time was right. But as I set down the pen, I heard it again, the hum. Low, mechanical, steady. I slipped out into the backyard, careful not to trip the motion lights, and followed the sound in the distance. Beyond the cul-de-sac, past the tree line, a faint glow lit the sky. The glow of machines running deep in the government-sealed printing factory. That was their heart, their fortress. And one day soon, I'd have to walk inside. The glow from the factory haunted me for days. I would catch glimpses of it through gaps in the trees whenever I took late-night walks, pretending to be the restless new guy just trying to get used to his neighborhood. But each time, I felt that low vibration, the faint pulse of machinery working where no machinery was supposed to run. That sound was like a countdown ticking in my ear. The HOA kept drawing me deeper. Gregory, the president, made a show of mentoring me, while Linda, the razor-eyed board member, watched me like a hawk. They wanted to test me, to see if I was worth trusting, and their test came sooner than I expected. One humid evening, Gregory invited me to ride along. No explanation, just a smooth, "Meet me by the clubhouse at 9. Wear something dark." The kind of request you don't refuse, not if you want to keep your cover. He drove a black SUV, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that swallows the night. Linda sat in the passenger seat, her eyes catching mine in the rearview mirror more than once. We drove in silence, the suburbs fading behind us, until we reached a checkpoint manned by two men with rifles. Government-issued rifles, not store-bought knockoffs. The guards nodded at Gregory and lifted the barrier. Beyond it stood the factory, massive, looming, its official government seals rusted but still visible on the gates. My pulse quickened. I wasn't just hearing the hum now. I was about to step inside the belly of their operation. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of ink and paper. The machines were monstrous, decades old but still precise. Conveyor belts carried stacks of half-finished notes, front sides on one, back sides on another. Workers, some neighbors I'd seen mowing their lawns, operated presses with surgical precision. They weren't bumbling amateurs. They were craftsmen, engineers, of fraud. Gregory walked with pride, showing me around like it was his kingdom. "This is where we make sure our community thrives," he said. "While the rest of the country struggles with bills, we write our own future." I forced a smirk, masking the weight of what I was seeing. Whole pallets of nearly finished notes lined the walls, guarded by men with sidearms. They weren't printing fakes to survive, they were printing to dominate. Linda finally spoke, her voice cutting through the hum. "He's seen enough. If he doesn't belong here, it's better we find out now." My heart pounded, but my training steadied me. I stepped closer to one of the presses, picked up a thin sheet with a freshly printed front side, and held it up to the light. "Crisp alignment," I said casually, as if I were an art critic admiring a canvas. "But you need to be careful with the overlap when you press the sides together. A good scanner will spot it." Gregory's eyebrows lifted. For a moment, the room froze. Then he laughed, a deep, rolling laugh that echoed off the steel walls. "He's sharp. I like him." Linda's eyes narrowed even more, but she said nothing. She knew I'd passed, for now. That night, after we left the factory, Gregory dropped me at my driveway with a grin that sent chills down my spine. "You've got an eye for detail, neighbor. We'll be needing that. Don't disappoint us." As the SUV disappeared into the dark, I leaned against my front door, exhaling the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I had infiltrated their most sacred place. I had seen their heart, but the closer I got, the more dangerous it became. Because one mistake, one wrong word, and I wouldn't be reporting back to the Bureau. I'd be a ghost buried under stacks of counterfeit bills, just another casualty of an HOA gone mad with power. And still, I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The following days blurred into a routine that felt normal on the surface, but every moment was edged with danger. The HOA paraded as if it were just another suburban committee, organizing block parties, nagging residents about weeds, sending out newsletters about upcoming bake sales. But beneath that sunny mask, I knew every smiling face at the cookout had touched counterfeit money, had handled a shipment, had stood guard at that factory. Gregory played the role of benevolent leader perfectly. At the barbecues, he joked with neighbors, slapped backs, and poured beers like he was running for mayor. But every time his hand brushed mine, I remembered those same hands flipping through stacks of sandwich notes, inspecting them with the precision of a jeweler. He didn't just crave power. He believed he was building a dynasty. Linda was different. She kept to the edges, her eyes scanning everything, cataloging faces, noting who laughed too much, who drank too little, who avoided questions. More than once, I caught her gaze lingering on me, like she was peeling back layers of my cover story one by one. If Gregory was the face of the operation, Linda was its suspicion, its paranoia. One evening, as the neighborhood gathered for a seemingly harmless HOA meeting, Gregory steered the conversation toward me. "Our newest member here," he announced, smiling wide, "has been showing real promise, attention to detail, discretion, qualities we value highly in this community. Polite applause filled the room, but I felt the weight behind his words. He wasn't praising me, he was claiming me, publicly tying me to their operation. If I disappeared now, if I pulled out too early, the Bureau wouldn't just lose their inside man, I'd be branded as one of them. After the meeting, Linda cornered me near the coffee urns. Her voice was low but sharp. "You're either very talented or very stupid," she said. "Men like Gregory, they'll take you in, make you feel like family. But families have rules, and when you break them—" She let the silence finish the thought, her eyes glinting like knives in the dim light. I forced a grin. Good thing I'm not the rule-breaking type. She didn't smile back. That night, unable to shake her warning, I made a move I'd been putting off. I retrieved the hidden transmitter embedded in my garage wall. It was time to send more than just notes. The Bureau needed proof, something solid that this HOA wasn't just paranoid talk. Slipping out under the cover of midnight, I followed the hum again. Through the woods, past the checkpoint where the guards had once waved us in. I didn't get close enough to risk exposure, but close enough to record the sound, the faint glow, the shifting shadows of machines through the broken windows. My camera captured a blurry but damning image. Sheets of paper stacked on pallets, unmistakably currency sheets. When I returned home, I encrypted the footage and logged it with the Bureau's secure line. Proof. Not enough to shut them down yet, but enough to confirm everything I had claimed. But the risk of exposure doubled that same night, because when I crept back through the neighborhood, careful not to trip a motion sensor or rustle a bush, I saw a figure standing at the corner of my yard. Linda, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Out for a walk?" she asked softly, though the tone was sharp. I nodded, keeping my face calm. Couldn't sleep, still getting used to the place. She studied me for a long moment before finally nodding. "Careful. This isn't the kind of neighborhood where you want to wander at night." She walked off, disappearing into the shadows between streetlights. I stood frozen, my heart pounding. She hadn't caught me, not exactly, but she knew. She knew I wasn't like the others. And in a game where suspicion was as deadly as proof, that made her my most dangerous enemy, yet. After that night, every second in the neighborhood felt heavier. The perfect lawns, the white fences, the neatly trimmed hedges, they weren't signs of order anymore. They were walls, barriers, traps, each one reminding me that I was living inside a cage built by the very people I was hunting. Linda's stare stayed with me. She hadn't accused me, hadn't threatened me outright, but her silence was worse. It meant she was watching, waiting for me to slip, the kind of predator who didn't strike when you expected, but when you forgot she was there. I had to move carefully. The Bureau needed more evidence, something beyond shaky footage and overheard whispers. They needed product, real counterfeit notes, the kind I could put on a table in front of my superiors and say, "This is what they're making." But getting my hands on a batch wasn't simple. Gregory trusted me enough to parade me around, but I wasn't yet on the production side of things. The factory was guarded, the workers vetted, and even in the meetings, they never spoke about schedules in the open. Every word was coded, every instruction veiled. The break came unexpectedly during a late-night HOA gathering. Gregory, wineglass in hand, leaned close to me as Linda spoke to the others. "I've got a run tomorrow," he said quietly. "Some distribution upstate. Thought you might like to ride along, see what family business really looks like." A test and an opportunity. The next evening, I found myself in the same black SUV, this time with Gregory driving and a trunk weighed down with more than groceries. We drove for hours, the city giving way to back roads and abandoned gas stations. He spoke casually, as though we were two neighbors on a long trip, but I listened carefully. He spoke about clients and arrangements, about how the HOA had outgrown lawns and fences and was now securing its future. At a rundown Wartischer's E-house, two men waited. They popped the trunk, checked the bundles, and nodded. But when they handed Gregory a duffel in return, I caught a glimpse inside. Not just stacks of legitimate cash, but weapons, too. Assault rifles, pistols, boxes of ammunition. This wasn't just counterfeiting anymore. They were arming themselves. On the ride back, Gregory laughed. "Money makes the world turn, but muscle keeps it spinning in your direction. Remember that, neighbor." When he dropped me off, I felt the weight of the night pressing down on me. They weren't just poisoning the economy. They were preparing for war. That same night, I managed to slip a single note from the bundle into my pocket during the exchange. Back in my garage, under the weak light of a work lamp, I examined it. The texture, the print, the faint glue where two sheets had been pressed together. A sandwich note. Perfect, almost flawless. I photographed it from every angle, logged it, then resealed it in a hidden pouch in my toolbox. This was the kind of proof the Bureau couldn't ignore, but proof alone wouldn't be enough anymore. Because this wasn't just about catching counterfeiters, it was about stopping an HOA that was building an army with money that should never exist. And I had just seen the first signs of what they were planning to do with it. The counterfeit bill burned a hole in my thoughts for days. I kept it hidden, but every time I looked at it, I felt the enormity of what I was holding. A single sandwich note was harmless in my hand, but multiplied into millions, it was a weapon. One that could destabilize the economy, empower criminals, and tear apart communities far beyond this little neighborhood. But it wasn't the money alone that chilled me. It was the weapons. Gregory's smug grin as he exchanged cash for rifles replayed in my mind. They weren't just protecting their operation. They were preparing for something bigger, something violent. The Bureau finally responded to my encrypted drops. They wanted me to keep digging, get names, shipping routes, and hard evidence of the operation inside the factory. They were close to authorizing a raid, but without precise intel, it would be too risky. The HOA had friends in local law enforcement, maybe higher. One leak, and the Bureau's strike would turn into an ambush. Meanwhile, Gregory tightened his grip on me. He invited me to more closed-door meetings, gave me small responsibilities, like running envelopes across town or watching over trucks at night. Always little jobs, never the full picture, but enough to make me look like a loyal soldier. And all the while, Linda's eyes never left me. One evening, she knocked on my door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor, but 3 sharp raps that demanded attention. I opened it to find her standing there, no smile, no pretense. "Walk with me," she said. We strolled down the cul-de-sac, the air heavy with the scent of cut grass and grilling meat. To anyone watching, we were just 2 neighbors enjoying a summer evening, but her voice was low, deliberate. "You're good," she said. "Too good. You slipped into Gregory's trust faster than anyone I've ever seen, almost like you knew exactly what to say." My pulse quickened. Maybe I'm just ambitious. Her eyes flicked toward me. Or maybe you're something else? I forced a chuckle. "What are you suggesting?" She stopped walking, turned to face me. The streetlight cast shadows across her sharp features. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. And if I don't like what I find—" She let the words trail off, but the threat hung heavy between us. Then she smiled, a cold, humorless smile, and walked away, leaving me standing under the buzzing streetlight. Back inside my house, I went straight to the garage, pacing. She was onto me. She didn't have proof, but suspicion alone could kill me. If she whispered her doubts to Gregory, I'd be finished. I needed to flip the board, make her suspicion work for me. The next day, I planted the first seed. During a casual chat with another board member, I let slip that Linda seemed distrustful of everyone, even Gregory. Just a harmless observation, framed as concern. I knew how paranoia worked in groups like this. One seed of doubt could grow into a forest of mistrust. But while I played my games in the daylight, my nights were spent watching the factory. Through binoculars, from the cover of trees, I charted guard rotations, delivery schedules, and the timing of the machines. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Trucks came twice a week, always after midnight, always leaving heavy and returning empty. The routes they took were irregular, but I caught enough to map a triangle of drop points across the state. It was progress, but it was also dangerous, because every night I watched them, I risked becoming the one who was watched. And deep down, I knew Linda was already circling closer. A week later, Gregory called me into his house. I'd been inside once before for a neighborhood social, wine glasses clinking, couples chatting about mortgages and property values. But this time the air was different, heavy, quiet. He led me into his study, a room lined with shelves of law books and framed certificates. It was all theater, of course. The books were props, the certificates probably fake, a stage set for a man who wanted to look respectable while running an empire of fraud. On his desk lay a stack of freshly pressed notes, uncut sheets spread out like artwork. Beside them sat a pistol, not hidden, not locked away, just lying there, gleaming under the desk lamp. Gregory motioned for me to sit. His smile was easy, but his eyes weren't. "You've done well, neighbor," he said. "Better than expected. You've got an eye, you've got discretion. But before I pull you further in, I need to know, really know, that you're loyal." I nodded, keeping my expression calm. "What do you need?" He leaned back in his chair. "Tomorrow night we're moving a shipment. Big one, not just notes, something more valuable. I want you riding with us. You'll be in charge of security." My stomach tightened. More valuable than money? His smile widened. "Influence. You'll see." I didn't need to ask. I already suspected what he meant. Weapons. More guns. Maybe explosives. The HOA wasn't just printing wealth anymore. They were buying leverage, preparing to enforce their will with firepower if the world ever pushed back. I agreed, of course. Refusing wasn't an option. But as I left his house, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Across the street, half hidden behind the curtains of her immaculate living room, stood Linda, watching, always watching. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I prepared. I checked my recording devices, tested my hidden camera, synced the transmitter. Tomorrow's run might be the break I needed, the proof that would bring the Bureau storming down on this entire operation. When the night came, I climbed into the back of the SUV once more. Gregory drove. Linda sat beside him. In the trunk, duffel bags heavier than bricks shifted with every turn. My pulse quickened as we reached the outskirts of the city, then veered off onto dirt roads that led us to a secluded barn. Inside, men waited. They unzipped the duffels, pulling out stacks of sandwich notes, testing them under UV lights. Satisfied, they wheeled out crates in exchange. Crates stenciled with faded military markings. Crates I recognized instantly. I'd seen them overseas. Ammunition crates, and the way the men handled them, with reverence, with caution, told me they weren't just filled with bullets. There was something bigger inside. Gregory turned to me, his voice smooth. "You see, neighbor? Money opens doors. But this," he tapped one of the crates, "this keeps them open." I forced a nod, even as I covertly angled my wristwatch camera toward the exchange. Every second was evidence. Every crate, every handshake, every note passed from hand to hand. But then Linda's voice cut through the barn. "Wait!" She stepped forward, eyes locked on me. "Before we load him any deeper into our family business, I want to know something." The room grew quiet. She pointed at me, her voice sharp. "Who exactly are you?" My blood went cold. The camera on my wrist kept recording, but in that moment, it didn't matter. Because every gun in the room had just shifted in my direction. The silence in that barn was suffocating. Crickets outside chirped faintly, but inside, nothing moved except the gleam of gun barrels angling toward me. Gregory's smile faltered for the first time since I'd met him, though he didn't speak right away. He just watched me, studying how I would respond. Linda's eyes never left mine. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but it cut sharper than any blade. "You showed up out of nowhere. You know things you shouldn't, and you slipped into Gregory's trust like you'd rehearsed it. So tell us, who are you really?" My heart pounded, but my training kicked in. Fear was a weakness. Hesitation was death. I forced a smirk, leaning back casually, even with half a dozen weapons aimed at me. "You're right," I said. "I did show up out of nowhere. And I did earn Gregory's trust fast. But you know why? Because unlike the rest of you, I don't ask stupid questions. I just get the job done." The words hung in the air. Gregory's gaze flicked between us, weighing my response. Then he chuckled, low and slow. "He's got a point, Linda. You're always suspicious. Maybe too suspicious." Her jaw tightened. "Paranoia keeps us alive. And doubt tears families apart," Gregory snapped back, his tone colder now. For a moment, their standoff pulled the guns away from me, and I seized the chance. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "If I were a cop, if I were FBI, do you think I'd be stupid enough to walk in here, unarmed, surrounded by you all? You'd never even see me coming. Think about that." Gregory laughed again, louder this time, and the tension cracked. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the guns lowered. But Linda's glare burned hotter than ever. She wasn't convinced, not for a second. The crates were loaded into the SUV, and we drove back in silence. Gregory hummed along to some old jazz tune on the radio, relaxed again, but Linda stared out the wind. Ow! Her reflection a mask of suspicion. Back home, I slipped into my garage and uploaded the footage immediately. The Bureau would have enough now: sandwich notes, weapons, distribution. But raids like this weren't simple. They had to be precise, surgical. One wrong move, and the HOA would vanish underground before the Bureau even hit the gates. As I sent the encrypted package, my phone buzzed with a coded reply. Stay in. Confirm timing. Do not break cover. I exhaled shakily. I'd bought myself more time. But Linda wasn't done. The next morning, a knock rattled my door. 3 sharp raps, the same rhythm as before. When I opened it, she stood there again, alone, her expression unreadable. We need to talk, she said. This time, she didn't ask. She walked past me into my house like she already owned it. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that whatever came next could either bury my cover or blow the HOA's entire empire wide open. Linda walked into my living room with the calm confidence of someone who knew she was feared. She didn't look around like a guest. She didn't admire the furniture or the carefully staged suburban setup I'd created as cover. She went straight to the window, pulled the blinds down, and turned to face me. "You're not who you say you are," she said flatly. I forced a smile, though my pulse was pounding. Funny, I was just about to say the same about you. What kind of HOA treasurer carries a Glock in her handbag? Her eyes narrowed. She reached into her purse, and for a moment I thought she was about to prove me right, but instead she pulled out a folded sheet of paper and tossed it onto my coffee table. I unfolded it slowly. It was a printout of a background check, my background check, or at least the false identity the Bureau had given me. "You know what's interesting?" Linda said, pacing now. "This file looks perfect. Too perfect. Almost like someone wrote it up and didn't expect anyone to question it." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "People have tells, records have wrinkles, but you're smooth, too smooth." She was circling me like a predator, waiting for a slip. My training screamed at me. Stick to the cover, don't over-defend, turn suspicion back on her. So I laughed. "Let me guess, you've been digging around in people's trash again? Do you ever sleep, Linda? Or do you just stalk everyone until you find shadows where there aren't any?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't break eye contact. "Gregory trusts you," she said. "That makes you dangerous, because if you're lying, you're not just a threat to him. You're a threat to all of us." I shrugged. Or maybe I'm just the neighbor who actually knows how to follow orders, which is why Gregory likes me. For a moment, silence. Then she leaned in so close I could smell the faint trace of her perfume. "If you are who I think you are, they'll never find your body. Not in this neighborhood, not in that factory, not anywhere." She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, the paper still in my hand, my mind racing. She was close, too close. If she dug one layer deeper, if she caught one flaw in the Bureau's fabricated records, my cover would collapse. That night, I sent an emergency transmission. "She suspects. Escalating risk. Operation must accelerate." The reply came back an hour later. "Stay put. Collect schedules. Factory raid imminent. Timeline, 2 weeks. 2 weeks." I almost laughed out loud. 2 weeks in this snake pit felt like 2 years. And the very next day, as if fate wanted to remind me how fragile my cover was, Gregory himself showed up at my door with a smile too wide to be innocent. "Jbor," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "We've got something special planned. Big shipment. I want you right there beside me." I nodded, hiding the dread curling in my gut. Because this wasn't going to be a simple run. Not anymore. This was going to be the one that decided whether I left this neighborhood alive. The big shipment turned out to be bigger than anything I'd imagined. Gregory didn't say much, just told me to be at the clubhouse at midnight. When I arrived, the place was buzzing with activity. SUVs lined the lot, their trunks open, men loading duffels and crates under the dim orange glow of the security lights. Gregory spotted me immediately. "There he is," he said, pulling me into the crowd like I was already one of them. Tonight, neighbor, you stop being an observer. Tonight, you become family. I forced a grin, though the words knotted my stomach. Family. In his world, that meant complicity. It meant no turning back. Linda was there too, standing off to the side with her arms crossed. She didn't say a word, but her eyes followed me, dissecting my every move. The convoy rolled out shortly after midnight. 5 SUVs, engines low and steady, headlights off until we cleared the neighborhood. I rode in Gregory's vehicle again, sitting directly behind him. Through the windshield, I watched the road disappear into blackness, the woods swallowing us whole. We stopped at the factory. This time the gates swung wide without hesitation, guards saluting as Gregory passed. Inside, the operation was in full force. Machines thundered, spitting out fresh sheets of currency. Workers moved like clockwork, stacking, trimming, sealing. The hum I had once heard from my backyard was now deafening, a mechanical heart pumping counterfeit blood into the world. But that wasn't the focus tonight. In the loading bay, a massive truck idled, its back doors yawning ope, and pallets of sandwich notes were being shrink-wrapped and rolled inside. Alongside them went crates, heavy crates, unmarked this time, their contents a mystery but their weight unmistakable. Gregory walked me through it like a proud father. Tonight we move 10 million in notes, plus hardware. It'll be on the road before dawn, across 3 states by sunrise. And nobody, not the feds, not the banks, not even the damn government, will stop it. I nodded, masking the adrenaline surging through me. 10 million in a single night. If I could get this shipment's route to the Bureau, it would be enough to justify the raid immediately, enough to bring everything down. But then Gregory turned, his smile sharp. You'll ride with the lead truck. If anything goes wrong, it's on you. My pulse spiked. He wasn't just trusting me. He was testing me. I climbed into the truck cab beside a driver built like a linebacker, his knuckles scarred, his expression blank. The engine rumbled to life, and soon we were on the road, a convoy of shadows cutting through the night. For the first hour, everything was smooth. Empty highways, the occasional set of headlights that quickly vanished behind us. I kept my face calm, but inside, I was calculating. If I slipped away, if I got to a burner phone, I could relay the route. But one move out of line and the driver beside me would put a bullet in my skull without hesitation. Then, as we neared a stretch of abandoned industrial lots, Linda's voice crackled over the convoy's radio. Stop the trucks! The brakes hissed, engines idled. Confused, I glanced at the driver. He gave nothing away. Gregory's voice came back, irritated. What is it, Linda? Her reply was ice. Before this cargo goes anywhere, I want to check something. I want to check him. My blood froze. She hadn't let it go. The driver's hand slid toward the pistol holstered at his side. And in that moment, sitting in the cab of a truck loaded with millions in counterfeit cash and God knows what kind of weapons, I realized this wasn't just a test anymore. This was an execution waiting to happen. The trucks idled in the middle of that desolate industrial stretch, their headlights slicing through the fog like blades. My heart pounded in my chest, every instinct screaming at me to move, to run, but I knew one wrong twitch would end it. Gregory's SUV pulled up beside the lead truck. The door opened, and out stepped Linda, her heels clicking against the cracked asphalt. She moved with deliberate calm, each step echoing like a judge walking toward the bench, her silhouette cut sharp against the headlights as she approached my door. The driver didn't say a word. He just kept his hand hovering close to his pistol, his jaw tight. Linda rapped on my window with her knuckles, a slow, steady rhythm. I rolled it down, forcing a casual smile. Step out, she ordered. I hesitated just long enough to make it look reluctant, then climbed out onto the cold pavement. The night smelled of oil and rust, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Gregory leaned against his SUV, arms crossed. Linda, he said, his voice carrying both warning and amusement, you're dragging this out. She didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on me. I want to see his hands. I raised them slowly, palms open. She stepped closer, circling me, eyes sharp as razors. You've been too quiet, she said, too observant. Men like you don't just stumble into this kind of work, they're sent. Gregory chuckled. You think the Bureau sent an agent to live in our neighborhood, plant himself in our HOA, mow his lawn twice a week just to catch us printing money? Come on, Linda, that's paranoia, not strategy. Her head snapped toward him. Paranoia keeps us alive. Then, back to me. Empty your pockets. I obeyed, pulling out my wallet, keys, a folded grocery list I'd scribbled earlier for cover. All carefully planted, all innocent. She sifted through them, frowning. But then her eyes dropped to my wrist. The watch. That's a nice piece, she said slowly. Mind if I take a look? My pulse spiked. The watch wasn't just a watch. It was my camera, my transmitter, my lifeline. I forced a laugh, trying to mask the tension in my voice. Careful, it's delicate, family heirloom. Her hand hovered over it, suspicion sharpening like a knife. Gregory finally stepped in, his tone laced with irritation. Enough, Linda. If he was a rat, we'd already know. You're wasting time. We've got deadlines, routes, and buyers waiting. You want to hold up $10 million in product because you don't like his watch? The standoff stretched. The convoy sat silent, every driver watching, waiting to see which way the scales would tip. Finally, Linda pulled her hand back, her jaw clenched. If he slips, if I catch him out of line, it won't be you cleaning up the mess, Gregory. It'll be me. She turned and walked back to her SUV, slamming the door. Gregory flashed me a grin. See? Family drama. Don't take it personally. I climbed back into the truck, adrenaline still burning through me. I'd survived, for now. But Linda wasn't backing down. She hadn't caught me tonight, but the next time I might not be so lucky. And as the convoy rolled out again, deeper into the night, I realized something chilling. If the Bureau didn't move faster, Linda might expose me before I could expose them. The convoy pressed on, engines growling low against the empty highway. I sat stiff in the cab, every nerve wired tight, the driver silent beside me. Ahead, city lights flickered faintly on the horizon. This was it, the drop point, the culmination of their months, maybe years, of counterfeit runs. We pulled into a massive abandoned warehouse on the edge of the docks. Rusted steel doors groaned open, and inside men with foreign accents waited, sharp suits glowing faintly under the dim overhead lamps. They weren't small-time hustlers, these were international players. Gregory wasn't just feeding local corruption. He was fueling something bigger. The trucks backed in, one by one, unloading their cargo. Stacks of sandwich notes gleamed under UV lights. Crates thudded against the concrete floor, pried open to reveal rifles, ammunition, explosives. Deals were being made in 3 languages at once, money and power exchanging hands as if it were just another Tuesday. I slipped my hand toward my watch, tilting it just enough to capture every detail. The Bureau would have everything they needed. My mission was complete, but Linda wasn't done. She appeared at my side without a sound, her voice low, venomous. If you're what I think you are, you won't live to see tomorrow. I turned to meet her stare, forcing a calm I didn't feel. Funny, I said. I was just about to say the same thing. Before she could respond, the warehouse exploded with light and sound. Sirens wailed, floodlights blasted through the broken windows, and the thunder of boots shook the floor. FBI, down on the ground! Chaos erupted. Men shouted, weapons clattered, shots rang out. Gregory cursed, pulling his pistol, but before he could fire, agents swarmed him, slamming him to the floor. Trucks were seized, crates secured, counterfeit sheets ripped from the machines. Years of corruption collapsed in seconds. I dropped to the ground, hands over my head, playing my part until one of the strike team pulled me up. You're clear, Agent. We've got you. Linda was on her knees, hands cuffed behind her back, her eyes burning with fury. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She just locked her gaze on me, a silent promise. This isn't over, she hissed as agents dragged her away. Gregory, pinned and bleeding from a split lip, twisted his head to look at me. Neighbor, he spat. All this time, you were the rat. I said nothing, just watched as the empire of counterfeit wealth and HOA tyranny was dismantled. Piece by piece. By dawn, the factory was sealed, the ringleaders in custody, and the neighborhood, our perfect, quiet suburban trap, was silent again. But as I stood outside my house, watching the sun rise over neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences, one thought gnawed at me. Gregory and Linda were only the beginning. Because if the HOA could build a counterfeit empire under the government's nose, who else out there was already doing the same? The job wasn't over. Not by a long shot.